with her family in the small village of Aylesbury. It was the summer holidays. That afternoon, she left home to complete her regular newspaper delivery route. She was riding her bicycle along a familiar rural road. Witnesses later reported seeing her speaking briefly with two younger girls. Nothing appeared unusual, nothing appeared wrong. A short time later, her bicycle was found lying on the roadside. The newspapers she had been delivering were scattered nearby. Jeanette Tate was gone. There were no signs of a struggle, no confirmed sightings explaining what had happened. Police launched extensive searches of the surrounding countryside. Fields were combed, woods were examined, volunteers joined the effort. No trace of her was ever found. Years passed, then decades. Investigators pursued multiple leads and persons of interest, but no one has ever been charged in connection with her disappearance. More than 40 years later, the question remains unanswered. What happened to Jeanette Tate on that quiet summer afternoon? This is the case of Jeanette Tate. On the afternoon of August 19th, 1978, 13-year-old Jeanette Tate left her home in the small village of Aylesbury, Devon, and began what should have been an ordinary newspaper delivery. It was late summer. The countryside was quiet, fields stretching in muted greens beneath a pale sky. The narrow lanes that wound between hedgerows were familiar to her. She had cycled them before. There was nothing remarkable about that Saturday. Within a short span of time, she would vanish from it completely. Aylesbury was not a place people associated with sudden violence. It was rural and measured, the kind of village where routines shaped the rhythm of life. Cars passed occasionally, not constantly. Neighbors recognized each other. Children rode bicycles along country roads without fear. In 1978, there were no mobile phones, no surveillance cameras, no digital records silently tracking movement. If something happened on a quiet lane, it depended on human eyes to witness it. The exchange lasted only moments before they continued on their way. It would become the last confirmed sighting of her alive. What happened in the minutes that followed remains unknown. When she failed to return home at the expected time, concern began as quiet unease. A newspaper delivery in a small village did not take long. As daylight stretched and she did not reappear, her parents began retracing her route themselves. The countryside that had felt safe hours earlier now felt vast and uncertain. Then they found her bicycle. It was lying on its side along a stretch of the lane. The newspapers were scattered nearby, some still bundled, others loose on the road. The scene was strangely signs of collision. No visible blood, no torn clothing caught in hedgerows, no clear drag marks leading into the fields. It did not look like an accident. Police were contacted immediately. Officers arrived and secured the area. Door-to-door inquiries began almost at once. Residents were asked about unfamiliar vehicles. Farmers were questioned about unusual activity. The narrow timeline became the center of the investigation. Between the moment she was last seen and the discovery of her bicycle, only a small window of time had passed. That window suggested something swift and decisive. 1978, without surveillance or telecommunications data, a passing motorist left no automatic record. If someone had slowed beside her, engaged briefly, and acted, the entire encounter could have lasted less than a minute. A door opening, a voice speaking, an engine accelerating away, and then silence returning to the countryside. Investigators considered whether the individual responsible might have been unfamiliar to the village or someone with knowledge of the area. A stranger passing through would benefit from anonymity. A local person would benefit from understanding the terrain and visibility. Both scenarios carried unsettling implications. Turned into weeks, the search continued. Media attention grew. Appeals were broadcast. Posters circulated. Tips were phoned in and evaluated. Each lead was examined carefully. Each one eventually stalled. Over the years, the case was revisited repeatedly. Individuals later convicted of violent crimes elsewhere were examined as potential suspects. Properties were searched. Ground excavations were conducted. Archived evidence was preserved for future forensic testing as scientific capabilities advanced. Despite these efforts, no one has ever been charged. The lack of physical evidence remains one of the most haunting aspects of the disappearance. In many cases, time yields fragments, a piece of clothing uncovered years later. The bends in the road limit visibility. A vehicle can appear suddenly and vanish just as quickly. Even today, standing on that lane, it is possible to feel how quickly a moment could unfold unseen. For her family, the years have carried no closure. Birthdays passed. Milestones arrived without her presence. Appeals for information resurfaced periodically, each one asking whether someone had remained silent for too long. The possibility that someone witnessed something minor, dismissed it at the time, and later realized its significance has lingered over the investigation. Advances in forensic science have offered cautious hope. Evidence retained from 1978 has reportedly been reassessed using modern techniques, including DNA analysis unavailable at the time of her disappearance. Cold case reviews have re-examined original witness statements with updated investigative findings. Left home that afternoon. She was seen alive at approximately 3 p.m. Her bicycle was found shortly afterward. She was never seen again. Theories continue to circulate. An opportunistic predator passing through rural Devon, a person with local knowledge exploiting isolation, a concealed crime committed quickly and methodically. Without definitive evidence, each theory remains speculation. What distinguishes this case is not only that a child disappears expedition, no late-night isolation, no prolonged gap before alarm was raised. The timeline was tight. The response was swift. The result was nothing. More than 4 decades later, the disappearance of Jeanette Tate remains one of the United Kingdom's most enduring unsolved cases. The road where her bicycle was found still curves through the countryside. The hedgerows still stand, cars still pass without stopping, but the question remains suspended in that narrow window of time. What happened between the brief conversation at 3 p.m. and the moment her bicycle was discovered? Until evidence emerges to answer that question, the silence of that country lane will continue to hold it, and the image remains unchanged. A summer afternoon, a quiet road in Devon, a bicycle left behind.